Welcome back to the In the Clinic podcast with Rob. And if you are looking to improve your VO2 max, which may be the most important factor for any individual after the age of 60, if you want to know how to do it safely, this is the video for you. Because today we're looking to break down what VO2 max is, how it relates to longevity, how it improves our health span, and what it truly means for you to be able to extend this safely. So my name is Rob Sumner. I'm a physical therapist, athletic trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist. And my goal for you today is to help you extend longevity and health span in your life. So today we're talking about a topic that really doesn't get enough attention and enough credit. It's not the one area that people really talk about that is hyped up. But if you're over 60, it is the one topic that could extend your life beyond just being able to do basic things like sitting in your chair watching Gunsmoke. So what we're talking about today is VO2 max. And VO2 max is one of the strongest predictors of lifespan. And that's not hype. It's backed by research. It's backed by science. It's really just matters more than your weight, more than what your BMI is, more than your cholesterol level. You know, even if you've ever smoked, it matters more than that. So in today's podcast, we're really going to break down what's VO2 max, why it matters more as you age, why it declines after the age of 60 without any type of intervention, and really how to safely and effectively improve it. And we're looking to do this without injury, without guesswork. So for us, this is really about how to set yourself up for longevity long term, because that's what we want. We want it not just a long life, but we want a long quality of life. So let's get right into what VO2 max is. So VO2 max, it's truly just a measurement, and it's a measurement of maximum volume of oxygen that your body can really absorb and utilize at peak effort. So if this is you and you are running as fast as you can and you're running at full sprint, that is going to constantly require oxygen. You're going to constantly need O2. And because of that, you're going to use that to produce energy, ATP. We've had different episodes that have talked about how ATP is extremely important in the body in relation to chronic disease. But just know that ATP is the byproduct. That's why we need oxygen for what we call cellular respiration. So because we need this constant level of oxygen as we're in a full sprint, at some point our demand will exceed our supply. So if we don't have enough oxygen present, then the body still needs to produce energy, ATP. And the way that's going to do that is without oxygen. And by being able to produce energy without oxygen, we can still produce a small amount of oxygen per glucose molecule. But that comes at a major cost. And the cost is lactic acid. So the more lactic acid buildup we get, then our endurance goes down. So when we look at VO2 max, VO2 max is the volume of oxygen we can maximally bring into our body to produce energy. The minute we can't maximally produce oxygen anymore, it kicks over to that lactic acid system and we start getting the burning in our lungs. We start getting the burning in our legs. Our body can't run at peak performance. So in other words, VO2 max really tells us how well our body handles stress and performs under a challenge. It is your aerobic ceiling. So it's your capacity to really deliver and use oxygen. So think of it like your body's horsepower. A higher VO2 max means you can generate more energy, more endurance. You can endure longer. You can recover faster. This is what we want with VO2 max. But this isn't just about athleticism. VO2 max is really a vital sign for longevity. It reflects our metabolic health, your resilience to stress, even your biological age. And study after study after study has shown that those with higher VO2 max, well, they just live longer, even if they have other health-related issues. So why does VO2 max why does it matter so much for individuals after the age of 60? Well, think of it as this way. After 60, VO2 max really becomes not just helpful for your life, it's actually critical. It determines how well you can bounce back from surgery. So your VO2 max overall is going to determine your recovery. So from illness, injury, any type of surgeries, it's going to dictate your capacity. So how well you can play with the grandkids, how well you can carry groceries, how well you can just do yard work. And it directly correlates with whether you're going to remain independent with your basic tasks. So when you start looking at VO2 max, you start looking at all of these landmark studies that they find, like the Cleveland Clinic and different researchers that have found that VO2 max is a stronger predictor of all-cause mortality than smoking, diabetes, blood pressure. You heard that right. It's a greater predictor of whether you're going to live well or even live at all, more so than diabetes, smoking, and high blood pressure. VO2 max matters more than your smoking history when it comes to lifespan. So when you start looking at VO2 max, it is a high predictor of longevity. So VO2 max across the board is going to help how well you recover, what capacity you're going to be able to do things as you get older. It's going to determine if you're maintaining your independence in your life or if somebody's going to have to come and help you. And it is the greatest predictor of how long that you're going to live. So you look at, excuse me, an individual like Dr. Peter Attia, who has referred to VO2 max as the biological buffer. It's your insurance policy. It gives your body the margin it needs when life gets hard. So think of your VO2 max as your reserve tank. It's your oxygen reserve tank. It's your durability. Because people don't fall apart in their 70s or their 80s just all of a sudden because of one catastrophic moment. It's often because the systems that govern their body really have no buffer. They run out of the margin. So maintaining your VO2 max over the age of 60, 70 is essential. And this is what I try and explain to my clients when it comes to VO2 max. VO2 max is a strong predictor because everything related to VO2 max is seen in your life. So if you start saying, hey, I am a 45-year-old male, and let's say I have an average VO2 max of 36, I can start predicting when my ability to maintain independence is seen. You can look at things like, let's just walk a 3% grade. Or let's go up and down 10 stairs. or let's just get off the floor. Well, each one of these is going to have a VO2 max associated with it. So it might be that I, going up a 3% grade, might take 26 VO2 max. Stairs might be 21. It might take 16 VO2 max just to get off the floor. So when you look at VO2 max, after the age of 40, you're going to start seeing individuals decrease their VO2 max naturally by about 5 points or 16% every 10 years on average, without intervention, without doing anything to enhance your VO2 max. So if I'm at a 36 and it's going to decrease about 5 points, that means at 55, 65, 75, 85, I can start predictively saying, okay, I'll be at a 31 here, a 26 there, a 21 there, a 16 there. So you could start realizing that at about 65, I will have difficulty walking up a 3% grade for about 10 minutes. I'm going to have difficulty going up and down 10 stairs. I might have to take a standing break and recover. I will have difficulty getting off the floor at 85. All of these then lead to the predictor from VO2 max of how well I maintain my independence. So if I don't maintain my VO2 max as I age, if I leave it to chance, there's a great chance I'm going to lose my mobility and independence. Because the minute I can't drive myself, go up and down stairs, I can't get off the floor, that also means I'm going to become more sedentary. I'm at risk for falling, so I'm going to decrease the activity that I do, which means I'm going to become more sedentary. And when I become more sedentary, well, I'm going to start losing muscle mass. So let's look at this again. Why is it that individuals start to decline with their VO2 max as they age? And it's the unfortunate reality that VO2 max will naturally decline at that 5 to 10, 16% each decade of life, especially after the age of 40. And then it dramatically starts dropping off with age after the age of 60. So we have to provide some level of intervention. So let's look at why this happens. What are some reasons that VO2 max is going to decline with age? Well, number one is we're going to see muscle loss. Why? Well, individuals as they get older will lose muscle mass if they don't maintain that as well. So with less muscle mass, you're going to use less oxygen, which means that you are going to see a decline in your VO2 max. You're not using it, you will lose it. Number two, this muscle loss is going to come out of either fear, or deconditioning. And once you start becoming deconditioned, then you're going to lose muscle mass. And again, your VO2 max is going to go down. The second reason that we start losing VO2 max has to do with our cardiac output. So our cardiac output, that's how hard the heart pumps and pushes blood through your system. Well, overall, as we age, our cardiac output will go down. We're pushing less and less blood through all the vessels of our body, which means that we will pump less blood per beat, which means we will bring less oxygen to all the cells of the body that require energy use. Therefore, we're going to create less energy and we're going to get more lactic acid buildup at lower level activity, which essentially means we have a lower VO2 max. So our cardiac output will start decreasing as well. So it's important to maintain our cardiac output. that's directly correlated to our VO2 max. But the third reason that our VO2 max goes down is we get less movement. We move less. You see individuals as they get older, they have, on average, more of a sedentary lifestyle. This leads to deconditioning that I talked about. But the biggest issue overall when it comes to all of these, individuals overall, they stop pushing themselves. They stop doing as much. They stop going for hikes. They stop pushing the limits of their cardiovascular system, riding bikes, jogging, hiking, chopping wood. They start doing the things that require more cardiac output. Now, this might be because they start developing more chronic diseases. They might have more orthopedic limitations like arthritis or other pain points, low back pain. All these start limiting their ability to be more mobile in their life, which is why it's important to protect your mobility at all costs. Because it's hard to push your VO2 max if you hurt all the time, if you don't have any energy, if you have these comorbid issues from diabetes, heart problems, strokes, others. It's hard to push them. So think of individuals, they stop pushing themselves. They avoid hills. They settle for flat walking routines. They don't breathe hard anymore. I mean, I heard a statistic that individuals over the age of 30, only 5% of people will ever sprint again in their lives after the age of 30, which means we're settling for a life of comfort. And that comfort overall leads to less heart, lung, and muscle demand. And that starts creating a downward spiral from that comfort. But here's the good news. The decline is not set in stone. With the right training, VO2 max overall can stabilize and even improve. And this can improve well into your 70s and your 80s. So overall, think of this. You can have an active individual and you can have a non-active individual. Okay? And let's say they're the same age. This is a 70-year-old. And we'll say this is a male. Okay? So the active individual, after the age of 70, can still get off the floor by themselves. They can go up and down stairs without having to stop any limitations. They also still like to hike. They like to play pickleball. They like to kayak. They play recreational sports. They are social. The non-active individual, we see a difference. We see an increase in falling. They're stumbling their feet more, which leads to what? They're more sedentary. They're more sedentary out of fear. They start seeing less muscle mass. What does that contribute to? More falling, more sedentary. They have increased deconditioning, leading to less muscle mass. And in the end, what do they get? They're less social. They're inside more. They're watching Gunsmoke. They're watching The Virginian. They're not out enjoying their lives, which also I've seen as being a physical therapist. All of this stuff then leads to more chronic disease. It leads to more pain, which then perpetuates the cycle. So it doesn't have to be this way. Your body is adaptive. It's adaptive, and it only adapts to the demand that you place on it. So if you challenge it, it will respond. But the problem is that individuals start to seek comfort. And when they seek comfort, they stop doing as much. And that starts leading to chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, osteoarthritis, all these things that then will compound their ability to actually move in their environment. And then it just creates a downward spiral. So we have to protect our health, our wellness at all costs so we can continue to push our body and maintain our VO2 max. But let's take another step. How do we measure our VO2 max? If you want to know what your true VO2 max is, the gold standard is a clinical test. That's something that we're bringing into our facility soon that will be able to put you through a test that analyzes your breath and actually spit out accurate VO2 max numbers. This is usually a clinical test on a treadmill with a mask, with a heart rate monitor, with trained staff. It's precise, but it's not always accessible outside of our office. So there are easier ways to draw conclusions that are more practical. Okay? There's 3 ways that you can do this. So we want to test our VO2 max. So the first one is a 6-minute walk test. This is exactly what the title says. You walk as far as you possibly can in 6 minutes, and you measure the distance. You use a stopwatch, you use a heart rate monitor, and you use a pedometer or other that tells you how much distance you've traveled in that 6 minutes. But you're trying to move as far as you possibly can within 6 minutes and then keep track of your heart rate. And from all those metrics, you would put that into a calculator. You can find those online, the 6-minute walk test calculator, and it will spit out what your current value is and where you relate to other people at your age grouping and your gender. So because of that, it's just a baseline number. It won't tell you your exact VO2 max, but it will give you at least an idea of where you're at. Let's say you walked 3,000 feet, not quite a mile in 6 minutes. Well, you could do this in another 2 to 3 weeks and see, can I get to 3,500? Can I get to 5,000? It gives you an idea of where you're at, because the more you can move, the more your VO2 max is going up, with all things being equal. Meaning if the only thing that's preventing you from going from 3,000 to 5,000 is you just run out of air. Your lungs are burning, your legs are burning. Not because you have hip arthritis. So if it's everything's equal and it just comes down to your endurance, you can start measuring, are you improving? If this distance improves, meaning you're walking faster in the same amount of time, it means that your VO2 max is improving. So that's the first one. The second way that you can test your VO2 max is with a Rockport walk test. So this is a way that you are going to walk 1 mile, and you're going to walk this mile as fast as you can. You can walk, you might be able to run, and you're going to measure the time it took you, your heart rate at the end. And from this, you're going to put it in a Rockport walk test calculator. And again, this will give you an idea of what your VO2 max is. This one's a little bit more predictive, has more data to it, and it's easier to follow. So this is one that we can put in the description below. That will tell you exactly the one that I use for a Rockport walk test that gives you a general idea of what your VO2 max is. The third way that you can measure your VO2 max is wearable tech. So a lot of our wearable tech that we have now, from our iWatch or your Apple Watch or other Fitbits or any of those, a lot of times they come with information that will allow you to know what your VO2 max is. So those devices like the Apple Watch, the Garmin's, Whoop, any of these will estimate your VO2 max using your heart rate, your pace, your recovery data. And from that, it will determine and estimate what your VO2 max is. It is not perfect, but it's good enough to be able to start tracking and seeing your improvement over time. Knowing your true number of VO2 max doesn't determine if you're safe or not. It's not a you're in good health or not. It's we want to maintain that VO2 max as long as we can, as high as we can. So it's something that you want to be able to measure so you can consistently improve. So for us, don't necessarily obsess over that VO2 max number. Don't obsess over it, but it does matter. And what we want to know is from this testing, are we improving over time? Are we showing improvement based on our training? Is your heart rate now recovering faster? And do you feel stronger? Because that's the whole purpose. Do you feel like you can go up and down stairs without getting winded, without your legs burning? Can you go on that hike? Can you get off the floor? Can you do things that involve a little bit of endurance and you don't feel like you're huffing and puffing and that you need to sit down and take a break? That's the purpose of this. That's the purpose of training your VO2 max. And that's what success looks like. That's progress. And that's really what we're after when we're looking at our VO2 max. So here are a couple ways that you can start training your VO2 max, okay? So how do you safely improve? So we want to improve our VO2 max safely, okay? So what are some certain ways that we can do this? Well, the first way we can do it is we could just start increasing walking, okay? We could just start walking. You can get outside, you can aim for 20 to 30 minutes. This is just your foundation, just starting a walking program. And then 2, once you do this, you can start adding a brisk walk. Okay, this is where you walk normally for about 2 minutes, normal, and then 1 minute brisk. This is what we call interval training. Okay, 2 minutes normal, 1 minute brisk. 2 minutes normal, 1 minute brisk. You could do this for 15 to 30 minutes or so, 15 to 20 minutes. Okay? The third thing you can do to improve your VO2 max safely is start using hills or inclines. Okay? Add short hills, inclines to your walking route, and this will create natural resistance. It will create it naturally. So you don't even have to do the brisk walking. You can go straight to the hills. Fourth way that you can improve your VO2 max safely is you can train in zone 2. Zone 2 I call the talk test. This is where you're walking fast enough that it's hard to talk to somebody that's with you. So you're walking, you're going, how much farther do you think we can go until we're going to stop? That labored breathing is the very end top range of your zone 2 training. So zone 2 is the most efficient level where our heart rate is beating fast enough that we are able to still produce ATP without producing massive amounts of lactic acid. If we could still do that, then we're at the top of zone 2. If we're at the bottom of zone 2, you're not producing any lactic acid, but you're spending more time to get the same output. So you can still work at a lower zone 2, it's just not as efficient. So if you only got 20, 30 minutes, you want to work at the top of your zone 2, and it's the most efficient way to start improving your VO2 max during the time frame that you have. So this is your aerobic sweet spot. This is about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. That's the top of your zone 2. So you should be able to breathe through your nose and speak in short sentences during that time. If you can't, you're pushing it too hard. And the fifth one I have for you is eventually short zone 4 training. We also call this high intensity interval training, HIIT training, high intensity interval training. And this is where you're taking fast paced, short duration, 20 to 30 seconds, and going as hard as you possibly can, running, sprinting, riding a bike in these short bursts for 20 to 30 seconds. And then you're going to take up to 2 minutes to rest. You want your heart rate to come all the way back down to where it started. And then you hit it again. And then you're going to do this in intervals of maybe 10 cycles, 10 or 12 cycles. And that short burst of zone 4, meaning you're going as hard as you can, getting up to a max heart rate for 20 to 30 seconds, a 2-minute recovery, meaning you might sprint for 20 seconds and then walk for 2 minutes. You want your heart rate to get back to 0. And you could do this 1 to 2 times per week with these others. By doing this, you're going to start improving your VO2 max. But the key with this zone 4 training, this HIIT workout, is you want to challenge yourself without crushing yourself. Push it to the edge, but you also have to be able to recover. It's really important to let your body get all the way down to its base heart rate. So again, how do you improve your VO2 max safely? First, just start walking. If you're not even going to get out and walk, it doesn't matter. It ain't going to help. 2, you want to start briskly walking. Start adding these interval trainings, 2 minutes of a regular walk, 1 minute with a burst. Then you want to start using hills. This is a natural way to do your burst workouts. Then you want to train in zone 2, where you're working out the max level of your talk test, that sweet spot of max heart rate. And then later, you want to do 1 or 2 times per week, adding in these short bursts of high intensity interval training if you're able to. If you can't sprint and run on a road, you can do it on a bike. You can do a recumbent bike where your feet out in front of you and you just push it as hard as you can for 10, 15, up to 30 seconds. And you can still do that safely. You can also use an elliptical, Nordic track, anything that will be an aerobic workout. Okay? So if you want to maximize your VO2 max in other ways, what are some other ways that we can do that? Okay. Well, 1, we can start doing strength training. Because the more muscle we start building, the more oxygen we can take in and utilize. So the more we build muscle, it's going to help all the systems in our body, all the way down to our blood sugar levels and other. We're going to use more oxygen. We're going to help our insulin resistance. We're going to improve our endurance overall. So strength training is a must. Plus, there's a high correlation to muscle and longevity with our lives. So strength training is one of the musts to also do to help improve VO2 max. The other is your nutrition. With your nutrition, we want to prioritize protein. We need that for what? Our muscles. And the more muscle that we maintain, the more we're going to recover. But we also want to make energy efficient. Then we can use that oxygen readily. So we can use a lot of our B vitamins, CoQ10, L-carnitine. All of these help with energy production across the board. When we don't have these B vitamins, the CoQ10s, the L-carnitines, it's going to limit how efficient we are in producing energy, which means we aren't going to use oxygen as readily. The last one I have for you is sleep. That's the third way that we can also help improve our VO2 max, because VO2 max adaptations happen during deep rest. Our body during deep rest goes to work and starts clearing out everything that's in our brain, starts repairing our body. That's our time that we help improve our VO2 max, is in that recovery phase. So by getting proper sleep, it's going to help you overall recover with your VO2 max. So the last little bit I have for you on VO2 max is shifting our mindset. Why is this important? Because too many people over the age of 60 stop pushing themselves. They assume that the decline is inevitable and it's natural. But improving your VO2 max is about more than just fitness. It's about staying independent in your life. It's about climbing up and down stairs without needing help. It's about getting off the floor. It's about being able to play with your grandkids. It's about being able to go for a hike, bike, kayak. It's about recovering better from a surgery or total knee replacement, total hip replacement. It isn't about marathons. It's about being able to do what you love to do without limitations. So this is the mindset shift we need, that we're not just exercising, but we're investing really in our future freedom. We have to maintain our muscle mass and our VO2 max in order to have that freedom in the future. So let me wrap this up. VO2 max overall is your oxygen engine. It's going to predict how long you're going to live, and it's going to naturally decline with age unless you train for it. You can start with walking. You can start adding intervals. You can eventually get into zone 2 training and eventually high intensity interval training. But it has to be supported with proper nutrition, sleep, and improving muscle mass through strength training. So here's my action step for you today. Walk today. Add a 1-minute brisk interval training. Start tracking the time that you're putting into improving your VO2 max, and then that alone is progress. And if you want a tailored plan specifically for you that looks at your VO2 max, your strength training, or just some more guided assistance on what I'm talking about here today, then check out our 4% Club community. This is my own community, membership community that allows people to directly talk to me, get their questions answered, and we have an assortment of videos just like this or guides that help people quickly take the information that I'm talking about and apply it to their life. So overall, thank you for listening. I hope you receive value from this. If you're still actually watching this video at this time, you're my kind of person. So I'd love to hear from you. Reach out, chat through whatever resource you're getting this. I'd love to tackle the questions that you have. And overall, stay strong, stay focused, and stay as one of our key people that want the most in their lives. See you next time.